So here's the thing, when it comes to actually shooting on your phone, a lot of people don't take this seriously only because they don't necessarily know how to use the settings and they feel like they're not a professional. But in this video, I'm actually going to show you 3 steps that you can actually change when it comes to the phone settings onto your phone so you can start shooting cinematic videos. So let's get right to it. So let's talk about cinematic shooting when it comes to your mobile phone. It's not just about opening up the camera app and just pointing and shooting. You got to have a strategic plan and you got to have your settings dialed in. So today we're actually going to build on 3 specific settings that's on your iPhone that we're going to change. Just so when you start filming, you can actually get that cinematic footage that you're looking for. So the first setting that we are going to look at is your frame rate. Specifically, when we're talking about the iPhone, usually we want to go strictly with 24 frames per second. The only reason why we want to go with 24 frames is mainly because you want to be able to have that cinematic movie type feel when it comes to your footage. Now, to get to that specific setting, when you go to your phone, you want to actually go to the settings app. When you are on the settings app, obviously you want to click on camera. And then obviously on the camera, it gives you a bunch of menu options that you can choose from. When you're on the menu option for the camera settings, you have record video, you have slow motion, you have cinematic record, you have record sound, you have formats, preserve settings, etc., etc. In this particular settings, we're going to go to the record video, and obviously you have a bunch of different settings. I will start at, like I said, 24 frames per second because that gives you that cinematic feel. It gives you that movie type feel when it comes to recording and just seeing it in general. Now, just as you actually have your format set in when it comes to, having it at 24 frames, the next thing is actually your movement and control when it comes to actually holding onto the phone. Because when you're recording with your phone, if you don't have stabilization and your movements are shaky when it comes to just moving around, it's just not going to look good. Now, I would say one bonus tip that you can have on here when you do go to your settings, there is a section to where you can actually lock in your stabilization. When you go down to record video, there's actually, as you scroll down, there's going to be a section where it says enhanced stabilization. You want to make sure you lock that in. Mainly because if you're moving around and there's a lot of shakiness in your footage, the enhanced stabilization is going to enhance and stabilize the footage so it's not as shaky. So you want to make sure that you have that locked in, especially when you're zooming in. If you're doing a lot of run and gun, if you're filming when it comes to like sports, or if you're a parent and you want to film your kids and you're running around with the phone, just want to make sure that stabilization is locked in so everything looks smooth and clean. Now, when it comes to actually moving, it really just depends on your scenario on how you actually want to move when it comes to that type of movement in your scenery. So depending on what you're filming and how you're filming, if you want things more stabilized and just stand still, you can bring a tripod, you could bring like a selfie stick, you could bring something that's a little bit mag safe that's on your phone to where it can actually hold on to the phone and you can just move around. For me personally, I have one accessory that I use that actually connects to the phone and I can actually keep my footage stable while I move around. So I actually have a cage that I can use for my phone, and it's from Small Rig, and they did a collaboration with, I think his name is Brandon Lai. I can connect, and it is a handheld gimbal in a sense, So if I wanted to get, smooth movements, I got handhelds that I can use. I have a remote to where if I want to just press remote or record, I can do that. So it just makes things a lot easier when it comes to my footage. So if I wanted to do like a run and gun and actually just use handheld, I know that my footage is not only going to be stabilized, but it's going to be smooth because everything's not shaky with just my hands. And then also too, it's a cage, so I can attach different, compartments to this, so I can make this a full rig if I wanted to. The last thing that you really want to look into when it comes to your settings, you want to make sure that your auto exposure and your auto focus are locked in when it comes to your subject. So one thing, or one, honorable mention that I would bring on when it comes to the settings, you want to make sure that when you go to the settings and you go to your camera, you want to make sure when you go to record video and you scroll down, just like when I had enhanced stabilization locked in, you want to make sure that your auto or your white balance per se is locked. You want to make sure that your whites are white so that nothing gets too overly exposed when it comes to that. But also, while you are on the actual camera app or the native app, and you're actually ready to start recording and you're ready to actually film, you want to make sure that whatever the subject is, you want to make sure that you hold on to the screen as if you're pressing onto whatever the subject is, and it will automatically lock the exposure and lock in the autofocus. So then the focus of that subject is never out of frame and the exposure is where it needs to be. If you feel like you need to adjust the exposure while you're onto your subject, you want to make sure that you hold on to it. It will say AEAF lock, but then you can readjust the brightness of that by scrolling your finger up and down. And as you will see the sun, as you're scrolling down, it gets darker, and as you're raising up, it gets higher. So you want to be aware of that as well. But while you're doing that, you can do that before you actually hit record. So then when it's time for you to actually start recording, everything is locked in and everything is where it needs to be. So there's no mishaps when it comes to your footage. So So that is pretty much it when it comes to the settings of your phone shooting cinematically. Again, you want to make sure that your frame or your frames per second is at 24 frames. You want to make sure that when you are moving, you want to make sure that you have stabilization set on your phone. And if you need to have any type of stabilization, make sure you get like a selfie stick. That's MagSafe. You can get and pick up an actual, cage for your phone if you want to do that. Just something to kind of help you out when it comes to handheld. And you want to be able to make sure that you move around smooth and not have any type of jitters. So having accessories on your phone that actually can help you move around is actually good. And then lastly, you want to make sure that your auto exposure and your auto focus is locked in. And you want to make sure that you're adjusting the brightness as you go before you start filming. So then everything looks smooth and good to go. All right. Again, I have a more in-depth breakdown of my cinematic settings when it comes to an iPhone. I have that in this video or in another video that you can watch. So if you want to check that out, you can. But if you just want a quick, crash course, this is pretty much all that you will need. But thank you for watching. My name is Martin Collins Jr. I'll catch you guys on the next one.